We're not going to hear our politicians talking about population because we have an economic system which is not sustainable. It's an economic system built on perpetual growth in the use of resources and energy. And when you have an economic system like that, you need an ever-growing population to sustain it. But of course it's not sustainable, but no one will admit to that. Look, I've asked politicians, why don't you actually admit to the truth that we can't always have growth in the use of resources and energy? And the main answer I get is, oh Dick, you couldn't say that, the Murdoch press. And I say, what do you mean, the Murdoch press? What's it got to do with them? But they're right. See, the Murdoch press is absolutely obsessed with growth, the greed of growth. And so any politician who actually doubts that we can have exponential growth forever is put down and attacked. So they won't say anything. So that means the leadership we need is not there because people are fearful of one very powerful media magnate. Well, the Tony Burke's strategy is a complete and utter waste of time, but I knew it would be. Because when you have an economy that's built on perpetual growth, no one's game to admit that that's not sustainable. And you actually have to address that first of all. But whilst we're all obsessed with growth, and you only have to watch SBS or the ABC, you'd think they'd be reasonably balanced, but they spruik up growth all the time. And so I think it's only cancer and economists who believe you can have this growth forever. It's a finite world. So population is just one part of it. The fact that our whole economic system, it's built on making stuff which is mainly rubbish. But if we stop making it, we'll have unemployment, we'll have recession. So the particular growth bandwagon we're on is not sustainable. The whole thing will collapse. Basically, with Tony Burke's strategy, they should have admitted right up front that the economic system is not sustainable. Anything that's built on perpetual growth. If I tried to sell Tony Burke a perpetual growth machine, a perpetual motion machine, he'd laugh at me and say, look, there's no such thing. But that's what the economy is built on. Now, no politician is game to tell the truth, and that is it's not sustainable. Once you admit to that basic fact, then it's going to require great leadership. I think we can have an economic system which is not built on perpetual growth in the use of resources and energy, but that's going to require some very strong leadership. It's going to be change over many decades, probably many generations. We don't have that type of leadership at the moment. I'm looking for a young person who'll come along and win my Wilberforce Award, get $1 million to communicate that we can't always have growth. Look, we can have a fantastic system, a capitalistic system. It will be built on, you can still have growth in efficiencies and growth in quality of life, just not in using more and more resources. We use something like 1.5 times the Earth's resources every year. It's ridiculous. Up until the Second World War, the efficiency gains from capitalism were used to reduce working hours. Otherwise you end up with unemployment. Since the Second World War, the efficiency gains have been used to make more stuff, more rubbish, more crap, if I can say it that way. But if we stop buying that rubbish, our whole economic system will collapse. One day we have to get off the bandwagon, otherwise we're going to go over the wall or hit the cliff. I don't think we're very far away from problems. I think the economic crisis that we're seeing all around the world are because you cannot sustain perpetual growth in the use of resources and energy. It's a finite world. So it's starting to collapse now. I'm looking for the leadership, and it's going to be young leadership. People of my age, I've benefited so much from growth, I'm so addicted to it, I'm never really going to be able to do anything about it. But I bet there's going to be young people who will be able to. Making money when you've got a growing population and everything's growing is so simple. You don't have to be that bright at all. In the new system we're going to have, where people will still be able to make more money, they'll still be able to lift their standard of living, not quite as much materially, I would imagine, but it won't be with the growth of using resources and energy. It'll be growth in efficiencies, removing waste, all of those things. We will bring in laws, I believe, one day, which are called sustainability laws, which means you can't make anything unless the goods you use to make it have been replaced in, say, that year, that period that you made it. Now, we're nothing like that at the moment. I believe capitalism can work really well without perpetual growth in the use of resources and energy, but it's going to require incredible leadership. I think the interesting thing is that very rarely will humankind make a decision about something that may or may not happen in the future. And it's the same with climate change. I happen to be a believer that humankind is affecting climate. But for us to make a decision now, when even the scientists say they're only 90% sure, so most people will say, oh, well, look, let's wait and let's see what happens. But most Australians are concerned, when they talk about population, they're concerned about the driving time to the city, or the wait in traffic queues and things like that. Most Australians are not very concerned about the fact that there's 1 billion people on this earth who are malnourished. That's going to be worse. The reason we can feed 7 billion people, and many of them not very well, is because we're good at turning oil into food via big farming machinery and fertilisers. That oil is going to become more expensive. It'll be $10 a litre one day, it'll run out. We can't sustain 7 billion, let alone 10 billion people on this earth, but we could sustain probably 2 or 3 billion with a really good lifestyle. That's what we'll end up with. We'll either be forced or we can do it voluntarily. We really have to blame all of us, right? And I've benefited incredibly from growth, but only in recent times have I realised that's not sustainable. What I love is Tony Burke has in his title this Minister for Sustainability, Environment, Water, Population and Communities. Hold on, sustainability? He's overseeing an economic system that is not sustainable, because the economic system is built on perpetual growth in the use of resources and energy. That's impossible. First of all, we don't need, I'm completely against any population control. We don't need that. Women in developing countries, women have got brains. When people are educated, they have brains. You look at Japan, it's going from 120 million to 90 million. They have $20,000 baby bonuses. But Japanese women are sensible. They know there are going to be shortages in this world, in food and everything. The same in Australia. Our birth rate would basically stabilise our population. Where we have to be responsible, we can't rely on growth to cover all of our economic problems by bringing in 280,000 or 300,000 immigrants a year. That's irresponsible, because when those immigrants get older, we'll need even more people to come in and pay tax to pay for them. It's a giant Ponzi scheme. Well, yeah, thoughts on migration. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone who wanted to come to Australia could come here? And that would be tens of millions, I would imagine it. It's just not possible. But my belief is, first of all, I'd like to see a doubling of the humanitarian intake. Borders are unfair, they're unjust, they're immoral. You can't make them fair, but we could make them a bit fairer. So I would like to see the humanitarian intake doubled. But I would think our immigration should be about 70 or 80,000 a year. I'm a disciple of Kelvin Thompson, which means we'd stabilise our population in the next 2 or 3 years. I think all countries should be doing that. We should be setting an example.